All right, this is the bonus content for It's Not Normal, the podcast, episode 6, where we are talking about the pressure to be productive. So I've gotten a ton of comments on the TikTok that I posted about this topic, and I'm going to get into those right now because I'm really excited to address some of these topics. So the first comment that we've got is from B, who said, I've realized the majority of my triggers and trauma can be helped with a good communicative partner, not fixed, but helped. I love that word, communicative. I completely agree. I think it can be hard enough to heal from your trauma on your own, but when you add another person into the mix, that adds a whole nother layer of complexity to the situation. Because now not only are you having to understand what's going on, but you have to understand this and also communicate this to your partner, sometimes maybe even while it's happening if you can. And so I think being able to directly communicate with your partner how you're feeling, what these feelings are, where they came from, and having your partner be receptive and patient with you is so incredibly beneficial in this kind of situation. And my goal lately, which has been kind of helpful for me, has been minimizing the amount of time between something that triggers me and me being able to look at the situation from a more objective point of view. And I think this kind of talks more about helping your trauma instead of fixing it. And looking at it through that lens where it's not like I have to get better, I have to eliminate all of these things as if they never even existed, that can be really overwhelming. When you look at it from a standpoint where it's like, okay, I'm not going to fix this, but I just want to get a little bit better each time I encounter this. That is so much more manageable and attainable and realistic. And I think when you achieve those things, it makes you feel that much better and it gives you that much more confidence the next time around. And so, yeah, my goal has been minimizing the amount of time between those two things. So if something comes up and I feel triggered by something, and now I'm kind of overwhelmed with whatever this emotion is. I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling anxious, restless, whatever it is. I don't always recognize right off the bat, okay, this thing happened and now I'm feeling like this and I understand why. There are still times when I'm just overcome with this emotion and I can't process it yet. But I've been minimizing the amount of time that I'm just kind of overwhelmed by these emotions. And my goal has been to kind of feel it, but as I'm feeling it, start to remind myself, okay, how was I feeling 5 minutes ago? How am I feeling now? When did that shift happen and what caused it? And also, to take it one step further, what can this be traced back to? You know, where is this emotion stemming from in terms of trauma? And understanding that is really helpful for me, at least, in kind of pulling me out of that emotion and being able to look at the situation from a more objective standpoint, kind of like take the emotion out of it. And now I can look at it. I visualize it like a top-down kind of view, you know, where it's like, okay, I can see this as like an isolated incident. This happened today. And there were times, you know, a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, where I would wake up in the morning and right off the bat, something would happen that would make me upset or make me feel stressed. Something wouldn't go my way. And that would consume my entire day. I would not be able to talk myself out of that headspace at all. And it wasn't until maybe the following day that I would start to realize, like, man, okay, like I feel better now, you know, I feel like I'm almost like a little bit of a different person. I can look at this a little bit more rationally because I'm not in the moment. I'm not feeling triggered by this anymore. I think those emotions, when they come on so suddenly, they can almost catch you off guard. And so it's hard to look at it from a rational perspective immediately. But again, minimizing the amount of time between being triggered and being able to look at it rationally has been a goal of mine lately in helping my triggers and my trauma and not necessarily with the goal of fixing them. All right. The next comment that we've got is from Nell1515, who said, I just had this convo with my husband. He said, just relax. I got it. All I thought was maybe he's waiting for me to help. If I don't, he will be mad. Growing up in an environment with a narcissistic parent is so tumultuous so often, and direct communication is something that is so wildly lacking that you can fear that same thing from other relationships in your life, whether it's a friendship or a romantic partner. You feel like even if they say something, they might change the way they're feeling, or they might change their mind at some point, maybe halfway through, and not communicate that to you. And you won't find out until after the fact, when they're already upset with you for the thing that you didn't do, that they didn't communicate to you to do. And so you're kind of just left guessing all of the time. And you always feel like, okay, maybe I should just do this thing anyway, right? You're just assuming that maybe they changed their mind, because now, okay, if I take the initiative and if I go and do this thing, right, I'm going to squash any kind of tension or problem before it even happens. And I think that's just a result of living in that state of hypervigilance for so long. Feeling like, yeah, maybe they're just waiting to see what you do, like it's almost a test. I think that's also a really common thing sometimes, where you feel like you're being tested to see what you're going to do without ever being told. And it just kind of contributes to that feeling of like anxiety and that inability to just relax, even when you're told to do so. All right, the next comment is from Maham. I don't know if I said that right. Who said, whenever I'd ask my mom to help in the kitchen, she'd say no, and I'll just do something else. Then later, she got mad that I didn't find something to do and didn't force myself to help her, because I should have opened my eyes and figured out what to do. This honestly makes me think of some of the early days in mine and my husband's relationship, because I completely understand like that way of thinking, where you shouldn't necessarily have to be told what to do all the time. You know, you should just know. And that way of thinking, I think, is so common in a narcissistic family dynamic, where instead of being told or communicating directly, as a kid, you feel like, okay, well, you should just know, right? So many of these things are expected of you without you ever kind of expressly being told by a parent, that you can kind of carry that with you, where it's like, okay, I should just know that, yep, the laundry needs to be done. And if my husband's cooking dinner and maybe he's starting to feel overwhelmed, even though he didn't say it, so I'm going to get up and help him because I should just know that. And, you know, maybe I have to fill the dog's food because it's empty and I should just know that. And all of these responsibilities and these tasks, everything from chores to interpreting the emotions of another person, you're just expected to do and to know. And I remember kind of projecting that onto my husband, because I didn't understand that that wasn't a normal thing. I felt that about my parents. And again, this is a relationship that I always thought was a loving, trusting, caring relationship. And so now when I'm in a romantic relationship, I would expect these things from my partner, where it's like, well, why don't you just know that? You know, why do I have to tell you that? Like, I know that, but I know that because I'm hyper aware and I'm thinking of all these hypothetical scenarios in my head, and that's not normal. That's not something that everyone does. And that was something that I failed to realize early on. And that can be a really hard thing to not only let go of individually, but also not to project onto other people, especially friends or romantic partners, because you almost feel like, well, if I was expected to do all of these things in return for love, like, why aren't you doing all of these things in return for love? Like, isn't that what a loving relationship looks like? It quite literally strips you down to just the bare foundations of emotion and feeling and existing as a human. And again, bringing a relationship into that mix, whatever kind of relationship that might be, adds a whole different layer to it. And the next comment is from Zed, who said, and God's forbid he shows that he's tired afterward. That almost always gets misinterpreted as being emotionally distant. This, I think, comes back to the idea of communication. If you did just sit and relax and not do anything while your husband cooked you dinner, and then he comes and sits down and he's feeling tired, maybe he lets out a sigh, right? He's like, I just kind of want to go to bed. It's like, oh my God, like, what did I do wrong? Why do you want to go to bed? You wouldn't want to go to bed or sigh unless you were upset, unless I disappointed you in some way, shape, or form. So just tell me, like, what did I do? I should have gotten up and helped, right? This, I think, comes from a fear of a lack of communication, where you're expected to understand what's going on in someone's head without them ever telling you that. because that's what you've grown used to for so long. And I think the best way to combat this is to tell your partner that you feel this way, and for him to reassure you, if I change my mind halfway through, I will tell you directly. Otherwise, don't worry about it. And if you sit down and you're feeling tired, to say, hey, I'm just tired. I'm not mad at you. There's nothing wrong. I'm happy that you sat and relaxed. This fear of always having to know what's going on without ever being told, it's really hard to describe, but it's so internal and it's so persistent that it's almost hard to believe when someone puts that at ease for you. Because it's like, really? Really? You're not mad? Like, you just want to go to sleep? You're not like saying that out of spite, or like saying that as a way for me to interpret you being mad at me, or like not wanting to spend time with me because you're mad at me? It's so complex, and it takes a while to start to unravel all of that and to understand it. The next comment is from Katie Neal, who said, I don't believe I was raised that way. I believe my mom was a single mom and worked 3 jobs, and I feel I must help so it doesn't pile up on them. I don't recall any time her guilting me or yelling at me to do so. I just saw how much she had on her plate. Yeah, total possibility. And I think, this kind of comes back to what we initially started the episode talking about, a healthy family dynamic versus a narcissistic family dynamic. And there are a lot of different aspects that can kind of help you to determine which one you're in. I think if you are in a space where you don't ever feel guilt or shamed or pressured to do what your parents want you to do, if you don't have a fear of losing the love or security that your parents provide for you, if you feel safe to kind of develop as an individual and to express your feelings, even if they don't align with those of your parents, and yet you feel compelled to help your parents because maybe you do see that they have a lot of things going on, they're working really hard, and you feel good taking a little bit of that load off of their plate. That is completely fine and admirable. I think the difference is, in a narcissistic relationship, there's so much guilt and shame. The relationship feels kind of transactional, where you have to earn your narcissistic parents' love. And as soon as you stop producing for them, they have the power and the ability to take away all of those good feelings until you resort back to producing them with whatever it is that they've grown used to receiving from you. This also kind of makes me think about gift giving. And the reason I bring this up is because, yes, I was raised in a narcissistic family, and I think that that has informed a lot of my behavior moving forward, and maybe, patterns of mine and things like that. But I love giving gifts, and it's not, I genuinely believe that this does not stem in any way, shape, or form from me being raised in that kind of environment. It feels like a genuine personal trait of mine, and I don't know, I guess it's just one of those ways to kind of express that things can exist about you that are centered around giving that don't necessarily stem from a bad place. I love gift giving. I think I enjoy giving gifts just as much, if not more, than receiving gifts. And again, this is something that's just like personal to me, and I don't think it has any real negative roots or anything like that. So there is definitely some flexibility within topics like this, and I think there's so many different factors to consider when you're trying to figure out what exactly the situation that you're in is. And the last comment that we've got today is from Jennifer, who said, not just raised, but when you marry one, this is exactly how you feel. Exactly every detail this woman says. The reason I wanted to address this comment is because in the research that I've done about the adult children of narcissists, it is a complete and sometimes even a likely possibility that these kids will go on to either be narcissists themselves or to enter into relationships with narcissists. Obviously, this is not the only path out. A lot of people break out of this and they start to see the world for what it really is, and they can heal and they can let these things go. But it's unfortunate because it makes a lot of sense why this cycle would kind of continue. If you grow up during those really developmental, formative years of your childhood, witnessing that kind of negative behavior, gaslighting, talking about people behind their back, creating this diluted version of reality that suits your narrative, using the silent treatment to get people to do what you want them to do. These are all behaviors that are being displayed by your parents who you love and trust and respect. And when you're a kid, you look to them as an example. And so in your own adult life, why wouldn't you mimic these same behaviors? Or if you're used to receiving love in that way, maybe you witness your parents' dynamic. Why wouldn't you seek out romantic partners who treat you the same way, right? Because that is your impression of what a loving, caring relationship is. I sometimes think about what would have happened in my life and where I would be if I never left that night. I didn't know that the behavior that I was witnessing was toxic or damaging. I was fairly confident in the person that I was and the things that I believed in. I truly thought that they were right. And if I didn't leave, would I have become a narcissist myself? Would I have sought out a narcissistic partner who gaslighted me and used the silent treatment, who guilt tripped me and talked about me behind my back? Maybe I would have. And that thought to me is so devastating and 10 times more uncomfortable than any of the emotions that I have felt on this healing journey, any of the ugly truths that I have had to face. They pale in comparison to what I imagine my life would have looked like if I never started healing. And that's why I want to share this with as many people as I possibly can, because it's worth it. I promise you that. And with that, that's about all the time that we've got for comments today. I want to take a minute to just thank everyone who's been commenting on these videos and sharing their story. I'm really so happy to see such a safe environment being created in the comment section of so many of these videos, where people can share with one another and encourage one another and inspire, and there's no judgment here. People are being really and truly kind and understanding, and I think that that's something that we don't see enough in this world, and I'm really thankful that you are giving me the opportunity to create that space for all of us. So with that, I will be back very soon with another episode of It's Not Normal, the podcast.